Welcome to the C-Suite Sales and Marketing Perspectives podcast. I'm Steve McDonald, your host. And today we've got a really special guest on with Madison Conway. And Madison, you're the Chief Marketing Officer at the DDC Group. And I'm going to let you explain a little bit about who DDC is and what you do, because I think it's really important in the work that you're doing with your clients. And AI is a big part of what we're going to be talking about here today. In fact, we're going to be talking about how we all know that there's been a big shift in how buyers, make decisions in the market today, and that AI is rewriting, not only how we are more efficient, how we enable our clients to make decisions and form the way that they go to market, but it also rewrites how we as brands form trust, how we make decisions as well. The rules of trust in a B2B world where relationships are everything, right? I think Forrester said it. Chief marketing officers, they said your number one priority as their recommendation was you need to have a trust building plan these days. The trust is the currency to get into the deals, win deals, keep deals. So that's what we're going to be talking about here today. You've been involved with a number of different companies that you said in one way or another, they are in a big period of change, right? And whether it's from a startup to growing or in a turbulent space and got to get out of that, or rapid growth and escalation of their business. So what I'd love to do is tap into that expertise. But before we do that, I'd love to know a little bit more about you. And I know one of your proudest moments of your life is that you are a mom of 2 young boys. So I'm going to turn it over to you, if you don't mind. It just tells a little bit more about you and your background before we start.
Absolutely. So thank you for leading with that. Yes, I think being a mother is my most important job. I'm also a wife, and I have been in marketing communications for about 17 years, if it's not a little bit over 17 years. So I have spent my whole career in the art and science of communication and how that converges with marketing and brand and storytelling, everything from crisis to intercultural, cross-cultural communications, learning how to effectively communicate in an organization that's multinational. So I have worked with several brands over my career who have been going through, as you mentioned, major changes, whether it's going from 0 to 60, totally startup, brand new, entering a brand new market, expanding globally, facing major disruptions, going through a brand identity crisis or brand identity journey. So those are some different things that I've had the pleasure of working on. And with DDC, I'm focused right now on making sure that we are navigating our current waters to get to that end destination of our new brand identity. So we are currently undergoing a transformation as well. And I'm happy to share a little bit with you about that if that's okay. So the DDC Group, my default is to define us as an AI first operations partner, because that is our new transformed brand identity. But the DDC Group was not always this way. So we were founded in 1989 on the bedrock of low cost offshore data processing, traditional business process outsourcing. And so over the years, several DDC companies came into the fold, and we really became a network of companies. And in 2024, we welcomed a new CEO, and he took us on embarking on this new journey of having us all become one brand. And that is a major change and major transformation. And so I've had the pleasure of taking us from the DDC Group, which was really a network of a bunch of DDC companies, into one. And that goes taking us from the traditional legacy BPO model into this new AI first operations partner identity that we're bringing to market right now.
Well, let me ask you something, because that right there, right? When we were just talking about the trust and building trust and how important that is today. There was interesting in the most recent Edelman Trust Barometer, 32,000 respondents worldwide said that they thought that business leaders like you and me, they said 68% think we're being intentionally misleading, right? Our brands are trust marks. We learned that in some marketing 101 class, right? If we took marketing at school. And so trust we've always known is important, but today it seems more foundational than ever. B2B buyers are waiting longer and longer. The self-service buying journey is because there is a lack of trust in finding the information that they need to find in order to make their decisions. They're coming to us last, not first, right? And so when you're putting together a brand new brand, I'd love to just ask in terms of not only maintaining the trust that the DDC group had, but now you're redefining in major new ways. How important is trust in how you're thinking about the redefinition of the evolution of your own brand?
Trust is everything. It's not any less than it was before. It's more so. I think it's just become a lot more complicated when we're looking at this, because right now if you're in a position like I am, we're trying to bring a new brand, trying to emphasize and elevate a new brand into our current marketplace. And then with that, because we're transforming who we are, essentially, by becoming an AI first operations partner, we're looking at new capabilities, new horizontals, new service offerings, new expertise that we're bringing into the fold, even new verticals in some cases. So it's a lot more than just a different logo, right? And so when you're entering a brand new market where buyers already feel really skeptical, it takes a lot more than good messaging. In skeptical markets like this, it's built through actions before it's built through positioning, I think. Building that trust has to happen at the ground level. And it's really important because people are already so cautious. There's a lot of content right now. There's a lot of white noise. They've heard big promises before. They've seen vendors overstate what they can do. So we're entering this environment, and you have to ask yourself, how are you going to convince them that you deserve a space and that they can trust you? So for me, and I think for many people at the DDC group, it really comes down to showing up consistently, listening well, understanding our client's world, proving that we're here for more than just a transaction. So when we look at the nature of trust, it's showing that you're not just a transactional vendor, but a partner who's invested in the outcome. Are you there for the long haul? Are you going to be there throughout the life cycle of the engagement? You're not just trying to win the pitch. So that means being present in the industry, understanding what pressures they're under, being able to speak honestly. Truth is a big part of trust. And oddly enough, sometimes people forget that. But you have to be honest, and you have to speak truly about what will work, what will not work, and then backing that up with execution and delivery.
So you said so much there that I want to have about 10 different questions. But one of the things you said there is you've got to be present in the industry. And I've boiled it down to a lot of different conversations that we've had on this podcast, but you could kind of say it comes down a lot to being seen in the middle of the most important conversations that are going on in the industry, right? They want to know that you can not only say you do what you say you can do, but being known and trusted is almost more important than that. And I'm going to put an exclamation point on it and ask your opinion about this, because I asked you this question when we first got together. I said, Madison, what are your two greatest challenges for creating long-term sustainable growth, right? I've now asked that. I didn't ask it at the beginning of our podcast, but I've asked it now for over 100 executives. What are the two greatest challenges for creating long-term sustainable growth? And the number one challenge was internal alignment. And so being present, being honest, leading with honesty and trust, it has to start internally, right? And in fact, out of the top 10 answers, guess what? Nobody said we have to really work on our product. right? And nobody's saying the product isn't important. And like the AI strategies and everything you're doing have to be able to do what you're going to say. But the challenges to growth were not product development related. They were internal related. Trust was number three on the list, and the voice of the customer. You talked about really understanding their pain points, right? These seem to be pretty fundamental things, right? Getting our act together internally, understanding our own customers, building trust. Why is it so difficult, right? Why is this a challenge that we all struggle with?
I think, is your question, why is it so difficult for the organizational leaders to be able to get the alignment that they
And
need?
yes, why is it hard to get internal alignment? Why is it hard to understand the pain points of our customers? Why is it hard to build that trust? Like, if these are like some of the most foundational things that we know we need to do, why is it really so hard to execute on that?
I think it's because if we're looking at something like AI, right, and you look at the amount of pressure that is being placed on leaders today, they have resolved. I don't want to put everybody in a bucket, but a lot of leaders are dealing with the challenge that they have resolved that they must implement something like AI, but they don't know where, they don't know when, they don't know what problem to solve first, they don't know who to trust. And so they are making decisions very quickly, although the process itself is not very quick. And so when they're doing something like that, I've actually been, I was backstage at a conference once, and a fellow asked me, I'm being told I need to implement AI. How do I do it? And we didn't get into, why are you being told that? What are you trying to accomplish? Right. So that risk causes poor decision making. The whole process leads itself to urgency driving the car. And so then decisions are made that are not the best. And I think that's when things get really dangerous. That's when data is left out, workflows are left out, governance are left out of the equation, the customer experience is overlooked. You're not thinking about the end goal. And so you're investing all this time and effort, and then it completely blows up. I think that's where it breaks. And I think the best way to rectify that or to prevent that from happening is not necessarily to move slowly, but to move intelligently, to be fast in learning and fast in prioritizing, but you can't confuse speed with skipping diligence. And you cannot underestimate the value that your culture needs to play in this, and the value that you want to be seeking for your accountability processes within your team. So all of those things should need to be considered. I think of it of a scenario as a mom, where with my children, when I'm telling them to brush their teeth because they had a lot of sugar, right? So let's say it's Easter night. Yeah, I said, you brush your teeth really well. Well, they immediately start brushing really hard and really fast with their toothbrush. They say, no, you're going to miss it. And we call them sugar bugs. So I say, you're going to miss the sugar bugs. You're going to get cavities because you're not getting every side of every tooth, right? I tell them to slow down, because just because you're moving quickly, you think you're moving hard and you're exerting a lot of energy, that's not the same thing as being thorough. So I think that's where a lot of times you see it break. But the best thing to do is just pause and look at what exactly are you trying to achieve, and then think about what sort of solution you may want to pursue and who those trusted parties are that you can speak with about that.
Makes so much sense. I mean, think back across our entire careers, AI has come in and it's almost like we have to do this. We don't always know why, but it's going to change everything. So let's rush to do it. There's not a CMO that I've had on this podcast, or a CRO or a CEO being asked by the board, what's your AI strategy? And instead, your point is, what are we trying to solve? What are we trying to accomplish? What are we trying to do? And then what are the available solutions, and does AI fit into that? It's almost like the tail's wagging the dog, right? and we're just rushing into it because we're afraid if we don't, that we're going to fall behind and it's going to be a competitive disadvantage. And so it seems like we're rushing through the fundamentals, right? The fundamentals of like internal alignment and things like that. So you guys are obviously, you're making some very large decisions. How are you making sure that the company is aligned? Like these are some pretty foundational decisions you're making about the company in the future and bringing a number of different companies together. So you've got not only just one company and alignment within it, but you're now bringing other companies together. That has to be something that somebody's thought through at a large level. Like how are we aligning around all of this?
Sure, absolutely. So you're speaking to DDC right now, right?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, so it's not easy. It is not. Transformation like this is quite an undertaking. And I think that anybody who's read, Jim Collins or some other business books knows that, it's not a secret that these major internal transformations are a heavy lift. I think, something that we really have to stay diligent on is communication. And that's usually that's usually the most difficult piece of the puzzle is things happening in silos, people trying to move quickly. And someone said to me once, you don't know what you don't know until someone tells you. Pretty simple. A lot of times in work that happens. And so when we're doing things like trying to bring all of these companies together to work as one, people don't even know that other people in the business exist, right? Let alone that that person should be part of a decision. So there is a lot of constant redirection and change and pivoting, but I think that's part of business. And I think it's a good indication of if you want to be successful today, you need to be comfortable on your toes. You need to be ready to move. You need to be ready to change directions. You need to be ready to change the plan simply because you didn't know you learned something new, right? You should always have that humility to know I didn't know everything before. I just learned something else. So we're going to change the way we were doing this. So I think that's a big caveat, but it's certainly not no easy task. But what we're doing is we're bringing so many different areas of expertise and experience into one that we're enabling all parties to benefit from the strengths that they all offer. And then, of course, like I mentioned before, we're even adding new markets and new capabilities. So it will only be beneficial for everybody in our future.
You had mentioned in our previous conversation that you mentioned in different terms, but there's an internal alignment. You mentioned a whole nother level of alignment around expectations that buyers are lagging in how they should be evaluating not only vendors, but just overall solutions, their metrics and how they grow their business, right? Things are changing so dramatically. So there's an alignment in terms of just bringing along the clients and like the solutions that you're building, they may not have the right evaluation metrics in their mind to even evaluate what you're doing because you're ahead of the game. How do you, that's a re-education, right? Isn't in a big way.
It is. It is. And I think not understanding this is it creates a gap on what comes after execution. So you might think, okay, we now know who we want to work with. We know that we're sold on the fact that they can execute. They're not just going to sell to us, they're going to execute. But then what's after that, right? We talk about delivery a lot and making sure that something is sustainable. You have to look at adoption, governance, long-term success. And I think that a lot of organizations are so focused on getting something live that they don't spend enough time asking what does success really look like 12 months from now. And that's very true in AI. And honestly, it's true in marketing as well. So we could launch a brand campaign and hit all the short-term execution KPIs like impressions, clicks, launch velocity, initial engagement. But then the bigger question is what happens after that? Did the brand performance improve? Did the reputation strengthen? Did consideration rise? Did it hold? Did the conversion rate improve over time? So AI is actually the same way. I think getting it implemented is one milestone, but then you need to make sure that it continues to perform, it continues to evolve, earn trust, and it will continue to create that value over the long term. So that's a very different challenge. I think just one more note on that is I think that it puts leaders in a vulnerable position, because once there is pressure and uncertainty together, people start looking for guidance from whoever sounds confident. So going back to that trust factor, sometimes the person who sounds the most confident may not be the person that they should trust. So leaders who navigate this best will be the ones who stop treating AI as a general mandate and start treating it like a business design question. What process are we trying to improve? What friction are we trying to remove? What outcome are we trying to change? How will we measure whether or not it's working a year from now? And I think when they start there, the AI will become much more practical and much more sustainable.
So much. I mean, there's so much. You talked about AI adoption complexity, right? And I don't know what the most recent stats are, but it was something like 85% of AI projects fail, right? We're all being asked to do them. We all think it's going to be the future of where we're going, but time and time again, we're failing in executing that. Now you're taking the lead and you're creating AI products and you're testing AI products, right? And you're refining AI products to bring to the marketplace. How are you taking the world of AI complexity, right? Where so many AI projects fail. Recently, it's been as high as 85% fail, right? And it seems like as a company, you're taking the lead and you're making a lot of decisions in terms of like, hey, here's the way you guys should be thinking about AI. Here's how you can use AI to be successful. So you're going through a learning curve, it seems like, of complexity that takes out that learning curve from us as businesses and reduces the complexity. Is that a good way to kind of frame what you're doing? If a big part of the problem with AI is that AI adoption fails way more than it's successful. As a business, how are you thinking about AI and how are you thinking about adoption of AI projects so you're not going through that kind of a failure curve, and how that creates both risk and opportunity at the same time? Like, how are you helping assure AI success, reducing the risk of failure?
So I think a big piece of reducing the risk and knowing that something is going to be successful or instilling confidence in the success is defining that, right? What does success look like? What should you be shooting for? That's the whole reason why you're implementing it. I think an issue is that so many buyers in the market today, whether it's C-suite or director level, so many companies who are pursuing some sort of AI solution right now are still evaluating their partners through legacy categories. So they're looking at through the same lens, while the solutions that they're buying are changing dramatically. So if a company is trying to modernize operations through AI, automation, better data visibility, or just a more intelligent operating model, you don't want to measure that against the same old stuff, because those old metrics will be a disservice to you. And I think that that is a reason why it ends up not being successful, is because success was never properly defined in the first place. So for example, if you looked at DDC and BPO, and this is part of our education process with our clients, right? Is in a traditional BPO model, buyers might often be focused on trying to achieve certain metrics in regards to cost per transaction, average handle time, speed to answer, headcount efficiency, utilization rates, error rates, or SLA compliance. So those still, of course, have a place, but they're not enough when you're investing in AI-led outcome-based solutions. In this model, more relevant questions are things like, did resolution quality improve? Did cycle times materially shrink? Did revenue leakage decrease? Did claims disputes or exceptions go down? So when you shift the goalpost, you need to make sure you're remapping how to get there and you're looking at the right plays to make on the field to get there. Otherwise, you're just going to be shooting for the wrong goal, right? And then you will be unsuccessful in what you had hoped you would accomplish. You have to make sure you are cross-checking what you're building against what you're expecting to get in the end of the day.
I love that. So it's much more than just a good beginning is a good end, right? And starting out and making sure you know exactly what you're doing. But at the same time, you're having to rethink how you evaluate success, right? Usually we look at it and say, well, what's success? But what you're saying is we're going to have to reevaluate what success is and what those metrics are that define that success along the way. That's kind of a complexity we haven't always had, or at least we haven't really looked at it through that lens. But AI is being that disruptive in the marketplace. We've talked about so much that I would love to give you an opportunity. If there was one thing that you wanted your C-suite peers to take away from our entire conversation, one thing that if we could remember this is what you would want us to remember the most, what would that one takeaway be?
Sure. I've got a few ideas. I think that it's important to note that in an AI-driven market, trust is not a soft concept. It is a business advantage. It is not earned by ideas alone. It is earned by delivery. A lot of companies know how to talk about innovation. A lot know how to sell execution. But what really matters is whether or not you can deliver those meaningful, lasting outcomes in the real world. Do you do the work well? Can you sustain it? Can you adapt it? Can you prove that it created value beyond launch? I think that's the difference. So for the leaders who are making these decisions, don't just ask who sounds innovative or think about who can execute a rollout, but also ask who can deliver. Who understands your business? Who tells the truth? We spoke about truth earlier. Who will stay with you long enough to create those results and results that hold? Because in the end, the modern buying is not just about choosing technology. It's about choosing who you trust to deliver those real outcomes. I think a lot of people chalk up AI adoption to just a technology conversation, but as we spoke about a little bit before, it's operational, it's cultural, it's a leadership conversation. A lot of people still talk about AI as if buying the tool is the transformation, and it isn't. The hard part is integrating it into decision-making, into governance, into teams, and into accountability.
I love that. You just reiterated making it into governance, claims, accountability, teams. I think that's the reason why, C-suite executives say internal alignment's the number one challenge. That is not easy to do. And if there's one thing that I'm taking away from our conversation here today, is that we have to not only have to redefine how we then communicate it, how we align internally, but we have to redefine what success is, right? And that trust needs to be part of the definition of what success is. I had a mentor of mine say, Steve, optimize for the customer. Optimize for building a relationship that they trust on you more than anything, and you will be optimizing for revenue. You will be optimizing for growth. And the way that the capability that we have and the tools we have to do that, and then therefore the metrics of how we do that, how we're measuring our success along that path, we have to redefine that as well. So that's my big takeaway. And I'm already thinking in the back of my head how I'm going to do that in my own business. So I just want to say thank you. We all take away a nugget, and that's the nugget that I took away here, this whole podcast, the goal here is to bring in different perspectives and ideas and ways of thinking and how we need to change how we're thinking and go to market. And you were amazing at that today. And I just want to say thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been a real pleasure.